My name is Jimmy Lawrence, and for most of my life, I thought I had it all figured out. I'd built a career from nothing, turned late nights at open mics into sold-out theaters, and made a name for myself in stand-up. People paid good money to hear me tell jokes, to laugh at my stories, to see the world the way I saw it. Twisted, ridiculous, hilarious. And for a long time, I thought my life was just as solid as my punchlines. I had a wife who supported me, a home that felt like something worth coming back to, and a future that seemed set. But the thing about comedy is, timing is everything, and I never saw the punchline coming when it was aimed at me. One night, in a dimly lit dressing room, I clicked on a video that changed everything. My wife, the woman I had built a life with, wasn't just cheating. She was laughing at me, and not just with anyone, with a guy who had spent years trying to be me, a guy who stole more than just my material. I should have been furious. I should have snapped. But instead I did what I do best. I wrote a joke. And then I turned my entire life into the greatest set the world had ever seen. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss new stories. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like, it really helps. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss. I always thought I had the perfect life. Not in a bragging way, not in that Hollywood movie, look at me, I'm on top of the world way, but in a simple, satisfied way, the kind where you come home after a long night, kick off your shoes, pour yourself a drink and think, yeah, I made it. I wasn't a millionaire, I didn't have a mansion in the hills, but I had a career I built with my own two hands, a wife who used to look at me like I was the funniest man alive, and a life that, from the outside, seemed pretty damn good. That was the dream, right? To do what you love, to have someone who loves you, and to feel like the ground beneath you is solid. Turns out, dreams are just as scripted as the jokes I write. They can be rehearsed, polished, and sold as reality, but in the end, they're just a performance. And like any performance, one wrong move can make the whole act fall apart. It started with little things. The kind of things you notice but don't really question at first. Linz used to come to every show, sitting front row, laughing at my bits, even when she'd heard them 100 times. She used to tease me afterward, quoting my own jokes back at me while we lay in bed, her hair still smelling like the beer-soaked air of whatever club I'd played that night. But lately, she'd been skipping shows, saying she was tired or had plans with friends. And when she did come, she left early, said she didn't feel like sticking around for drinks after. Then there was the phone, always flipped screen down, always vibrating at odd hours. If I asked, she'd laugh it off, say it was just the girls blowing up the group chat. I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to believe her. Maybe I thought that if I didn't acknowledge the problem, it wasn't real. But the thing about little things is that they add up. One night, after a sold-out show in New York, I was in my dressing room, still riding the high of the crowd, scrolling through messages from fans, friends, promoters. That's when I saw it. A text from an unknown number. Thought you should see this, ma'am. There was a video attached. My first thought? Some random fan sending me a clip from the show, maybe a bootleg recording. I almost ignored it. Almost. I clicked play. The room was dimly lit, but I recognized it immediately. My dressing room, the couch, the cheap-ass lamp in the corner, and then there they were, Linz and him. It took me a second to process what I was seeing. Her legs draped over his lap, his hands on her waist. The way she leaned in whispered something in his ear before laughing. Not just any laugh. My laugh. The one she used to have for me. Then she said something that made my stomach turn. Can you believe people actually think he's funny? I don't remember how long I sat there, staring at the screen. Could have been minutes, could have been an hour. I just kept watching, replaying the same few seconds over and over, waiting for it to stop hurting. But it never did. The guy, I didn't even know his name at first, just that he looked young, way too young, like he should be asking for my autograph, not hooking up with my wife in my dressing room. My hands didn't shake, my breath didn't quicken, the world didn't blur like in those dramatic movie moments. Instead, something in me just clicked. I closed the video, took a deep breath, adjusted my jacket, walked out onto that stage and gave the best goddamn performance of my life. When I got back to LA, I played it cool. I kissed her when I walked through the door, asked about her week, let her talk about things that didn't matter. She didn't even flinch. That hurt more than the video. The ease with which she lied, like I was just another audience member she was entertaining. A few nights later, I finally put a name to the kid. Zachary, or as he called himself, Zack Attack. A wannabe comic who'd been hanging around the clubs, doing open mics, trying to make a name for himself. I remembered him now, always watching from the sidelines, laughing a little too hard at my sets, studying me. I checked his social media. His last few sets were eerily familiar. My phrasing, my timing, even my delivery. This wasn't just some random kid screwing my wife. He was trying to be me. I started watching them closely, but not in the way a heartbroken husband does. No anger, no outbursts, just quiet observation. Lynn's was sloppy. She started dressing up more when she went out with friends. Her perfume lingered longer when she came home. She started checking her phone before she even kissed me hello. Then came the final push. I was in my office, scrolling through our shared credit card statements, something I never did before. 2 tickets to Vegas, first class, booked on my card, under her name and his. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. If this was a stand-up set, this would be the perfect setup. The audience would be on the edge of their seats, waiting for the punchline. I was going to make sure it was worth the wait. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wasn't interested in an argument filled with fake tears and half-assed excuses. I wanted the truth, and not the sugar-coated, carefully curated version she'd try to sell me. The real truth. The kind that doesn't come from a guilty confession, but from undeniable proof. So I watched. I played the role of the clueless husband perfectly, nodding at her stories, kissing her goodbye when she left, even laughing at jokes I didn't find funny anymore. But behind that smile, I was taking notes. The Vegas tickets weren't a mistake. She wasn't covering her tracks. She genuinely thought I wouldn't notice. That stung more than anything else. The sheer arrogance of it, the way she assumed I was too blind, too busy, or maybe just too naive to catch on. It almost made me second-guess myself. Had I really been that oblivious? Had I spent so much time perfecting my craft that I failed to notice my own wife slipping away? I started keeping track of her movements, not in a crazy, obsessive way, no GPS trackers, no following her around in a hoodie like some jealous ex. I just started paying attention. She had patterns. Mondays, she stayed home, cooked dinner like everything was fine. Tuesdays, she had yoga but always came back with perfect makeup and hair that smelled too fresh. Wednesdays, she had drinks with the girls, a group of women I was pretty sure didn't even exist outside of her imagination. Thursdays, she stayed in again as if to balance out the guilt. Fridays and Saturdays, she had her networking events, which apparently involved hotel rooms and my credit card. Sundays, she was back to playing the doting wife, probably thinking a lazy morning in bed and a shared cup of coffee would keep the illusion alive. It was all so calculated, like a carefully structured set where every beat, every pause, every line was designed to land perfectly. But the problem with rehearsed performances is that they start to fall apart when you throw in the unexpected. So I did. One Tuesday night, instead of staying home, like I always did, I showed up at the yoga studio. Just walked in like any other clueless husband, smiling at the receptionist as I asked if my wife had signed in. The girl behind the counter looked at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. We don't have a Lindsay Lawrence? Yeah, I said, forcing a chuckle. She left her water bottle at home. Thought I'd drop it off. The girl tapped a few keys on her keyboard before shaking her head. She hasn't been here in months. I nodded, pretended to be surprised, even let out a small, confused laugh. Guess I got the schedule mixed up. I walked out of there with a polite smile, but inside I felt the first real wave of anger settle in. Not because she lied, I'd already accepted that part, but because of how badly she lied. She didn't even try to make it believable. She relied on me being too trusting, too caught up in my own world to check. That's when I knew she wasn't just cheating, she was laughing at me behind my back. So I gave her more rope. The next night, when she went out for drinks with the girls, I called her 10 minutes after she left. She answered on the second ring, her voice smooth, casual. "Hey, babe." "Hey," I said, keeping my tone light. "You left your wallet on the counter. Thought you might need it." A small pause. Barely a second, but I caught it. "Oh, that's okay," she said quickly. "I have my card in my phone case." "Still?" I said, pushing just a little. "Where are you? I'll swing by and drop it off." Another pause. We're already at the bar," she said, a little too fast. "It's loud, kinda crazy. I don't want you driving all the way here just for that." "Which bar?" Silence. This one lasted longer. "The usual," she finally said, but her voice had lost its confidence. "Well, we didn't have a usual." I let that hang in the air for a moment before laughing. "All right, have fun. See you later." Hung up before she could say anything else. The truth was, I didn't need to follow her. I didn't need to drive around, peeking through bar windows like some desperate, broken man looking for proof of what I already knew. She'd already given it to me, right there in that hesitation, in the way her voice lost its rhythm. I used to make a living off reading audiences, off feeling the energy in a room, knowing exactly when to pause for effect, when to let a joke breathe. She had no idea that I was reading her the same way. And just like a bad comedian who forgets their own punchline, she was starting to fumble. A few nights later, I decided it was time to stop playing defense. I had seen enough, heard enough, and now I needed to know just how deep this went. Not just the cheating, but the mindset behind it. How long had she been lying to me? Was it just physical, or was she genuinely building a new life behind my back? More importantly, did she think I was really that stupid? She had a pattern, and patterns are easy to predict. Friday night was always her networking event, which I had now translated to Zach night. I played my role perfectly, kissed her on the cheek, told her to have fun, even threw in a casual "say hi to the girls" for me, just to watch the flicker of hesitation in her eyes. She recovered quickly, flashing me that same smile she used every time she was about to lie. She left in a black dress I had never seen before. Tight, elegant, the kind of dress that wasn't meant for business meetings or casual drinks with friends, the kind of dress you wear when you want to make sure someone specific notices you. I waited until I heard the Uber pull away, then checked the ride history on our shared account. My heart didn't even race when I saw the destination. The bar was in West Hollywood, the kind of place that catered to people who wanted to feel exclusive. A dark, intimate lounge with overpriced cocktails and just enough dim lighting to make everyone feel attractive. I arrived 20 minutes later, walking in without hesitation, keeping to the shadows. The place was packed, voices buzzing over low music, the air thick with expensive perfume and ego. I spotted her instantly. She was easy to find. She had always been the most beautiful woman in the room, and that hadn't changed. But the way she moved was different. She wasn't sitting stiffly, politely, the way she did at real networking events. She was leaning in close, her fingers trailing along the rim of her glass, her posture relaxed in a way that told me she was completely comfortable here. And then there was him, Zach, sitting next to her, way too close for just friends. His hand was resting on her knee, casual, like he had done it 1,000 times before. He leaned in, whispered something in her ear, and she laughed. My laugh. The one she used to give me, back when I was still worth her time. I stood there, frozen in place, not out of shock, not out of pain, but out of sheer fascination. I wasn't watching my wife cheat on me anymore. I was watching a performance, a perfectly rehearsed act where she played the role of the adoring girlfriend to a man who, just a few months ago, probably asked me for an autograph after one of my shows. I wanted to walk up to them. I wanted to sit down, order a drink, and watch their reactions when they finally noticed me. I wanted to see the exact moment when her perfect little fantasy world shattered into pieces. But I didn't. Because the truth was, this moment wasn't enough. If I had confronted her, she would have denied it. Maybe she would have gaslit me, turned it around, made me the bad guy for spying on her. Maybe she would have cried, begged, promised it was just a mistake, a meaningless fling, nothing to throw away a marriage over. Or maybe, just maybe, she would have looked me in the eye and told me the truth. That she was done with me, that I wasn't enough, that I had become just another joke in her life. I wasn't ready for any of those scenarios. So instead, I just stood there, letting it all sink in, letting the reality of it settle into my bones. My wife was here, in public, with another man, completely at ease, completely comfortable, because she knew I wouldn't be here. She knew I was home, waiting, oblivious. Except now, I wasn't. I turned and walked out. I didn't need to see anything else. I didn't need to hear their conversation or watch them leave together. I had everything I needed. That night, when she came home, she acted like nothing was different. She crawled into bed next to me, her perfume still clinging to her skin, her breathing slow and steady as she drifted off to sleep. I lay awake next to her, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of what I had seen. I wasn't sad, I wasn't angry, I wasn't even surprised anymore. I was calm, because now I had proof, and proof meant I could finally stop waiting. The next morning, I started laying the groundwork, small things, things she wouldn't notice. I went through our shared finances, flagged every suspicious transaction. I checked our joint credit card statements, traced every dollar she had spent on him. I scrolled through her social media, through Zach's, piecing together their timeline, seeing just how long this had been going on. I didn't just want revenge, I wanted control. Because she had taken something from me, respect, and I was going to take it back the only way I knew how, with an audience. I spent the next week preparing like it was the biggest show of my life, because in a way it was. This wasn't just another set. This wasn't about testing out new material or seeing which jokes landed best with the crowd. This was my moment, my shot at taking back everything she had tried to take from me. My confidence, my dignity, my control. Because that's what comedy is, right? Control. It's standing in front of a crowd and deciding exactly how they're going to feel. It's taking the worst moments of your life, the ones that should have broken you, and twisting them into something people can't look away from, something they have to laugh at. Because if they're laughing, it means you're winning. And I was about to turn my entire life into the best punchline they'd ever heard. I didn't throw a tantrum, I didn't smash her phone, scream in her face, or demand answers. She would just lie about anyway. No, I did what I do best. I wrote. Every night, after she fell asleep beside me, thinking she was still getting away with it, I sat in my office and turned my rage into material. And not just any material. The kind of set that would leave scars. Then I booked a venue. Something intimate, exclusive, but still big enough to make an impact. I didn't need an opener. Didn't need distractions. This wasn't about warming up the audience. This was about dropping a bomb and letting the world watch it explode. Tickets sold out in hours. The live stream countdown hit 100,000 viewers before I even stepped onto the stage. The internet was buzzing. People thought I was about to debut a secret special, some new hour of stand-up I had been working on. They had no idea what was coming. Linz had no clue either. I kept up appearances, I kissed her goodnight, I let her tell me she was proud of me for putting together a last-minute show. I even let her laugh at the idea that I was probably just gonna roast cancel culture for an hour. I smiled at her, looked her dead in the eyes. You won't want to miss it. She didn't catch the warning. That night, I walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. The energy in the room was electric. It felt different from any other show I'd ever done. Usually I'd take a moment to settle in, crack a few lighthearted jokes, ease the crowd into the rhythm. But not this time. This time I just stood there, microphone in hand, letting the noise wash over me. Then I smiled. You ever wake up one day and realize you've been living in someone else's joke? A few chuckles, curious, polite. They didn't know where I was going with this yet. You think you're the star, the main character, right? But no, you're just the setup. The setup to a punchline someone else has been delivering behind your back. And the worst part? You don't even know the joke's on you. The chuckles turned into laughter, but not the big laughs yet. This was the nervous kind. The kind where people aren't sure if they should be laughing, but they do anyway because the tension is so thick they need a way to break it. You see, I thought I had this perfect life. Beautiful wife, great career, nice house, all that. But turns out my wife had hobbies. Yeah, and I'm not talking about yoga or pottery or, I don't know, rescuing stray dogs. No. Those would have been healthy, respectable. Her hobby was Fing open mic comics. And boom, the room erupted. Gasps, laughter, people looking at each other trying to decide if they had really just heard what they thought they had heard. Some people were already pulling out their phones. I could feel the internet waking up, realizing something insane was happening in real time. I took a sip of my drink, letting the laughter breathe before delivering the next line. And you want to know the worst part? It wasn't even a famous comedian. It wasn't a headliner. Hell, I could have lived with that. You cheat on me with, I don't know, Kevin Hart or Dave Chappelle. Fine, I get it. That's an upgrade, I can respect that. But no. My wife decided to cheat on me with a dude who calls himself Zach Attack on Instagram. At that moment, the audience completely lost it. Drinks were spilling, people were grabbing their friends, shaking their heads in disbelief. The noise was deafening. Even the crew in the back, guys who had seen everything in this industry, were howling. I let them settle down, then tilted my head like I had just thought of something. You guys know Zach, right? Some of you have probably seen him. If not, don't worry, I brought receipts. I turned to the massive screen behind me, and in perfect comedic timing, boom! A photo of Linz and Zach at the bar, her hand on his thigh, his arm around her waist. The reaction was instant. Roars of laughter. Some people screamed. A few guys ran out of their seats, pacing, hands on their heads because they couldn't believe what they were seeing. I turned back to the mic, grinning. Yeah, I know, right? You guys thought this was just another comedy special. Nope. Welcome to my divorce party. The crowd was electric. The laughter didn't just fill the room, it shook it. People weren't just amused, they were losing their minds. Some were bent over their seats, wiping tears from their eyes. Others were clutching their friends, shaking their heads in pure disbelief. It wasn't just about the jokes. It was the shock of it all, the rawness, the fact that no one had ever seen a comedian do something like this before. This wasn't a planned routine. This wasn't a carefully crafted, industry-approved special. This was real, and people could feel it. I let the energy ride out for a moment, just standing there, soaking it in. I wanted them to sit in it, to realize what they had just walked into. Then I adjusted the mic, took another slow sip of my drink, and smiled. Now, in case you're wondering, yes, she's watching this right now. That set off another wave of laughter. A few people actually screamed. I could see faces in the audience turning to each other, mouthing, "No Fingway." I lifted my free hand and waved at the camera. "Hi, Linz. Hope you're enjoying the show. Didn't want you to feel left out, so I saved you a front row seat. Figured you deserved to hear this set before it hits Netflix." The roar that followed shook the walls. Some people were on their feet, clapping, stomping, slamming their hands on their tables. I kept going. "Oh, and Zach, buddy, if you're out there, congrats, man, you finally made it on stage. Not exactly how you pictured it, huh? But hey, don't be sad. You always wanted to follow in my footsteps. Guess this is just part of the process." I had to pause after that one. The laughter was too loud. People were grabbing their drinks, spilling them, shaking their heads because they couldn't believe what they were hearing. I could actually see people pulling out their phones, recording, live tweeting, texting their friends, "You need to get online now." This was it. This was the moment where I stopped being the guy who got cheated on. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the one telling the joke, and everyone else, including Linz and Zach, were just part of the punchline. I let them catch their breath before I continued. "You know, I gotta admit, when I first found out, I was hurt. I mean, I'm a comedian. Getting laughed at is literally my job, but getting laughed at by my own wife, that one stung a little." Another wave of laughter, a few sympathetic dams from the back of the room. But then I thought, why waste a good story? Why let all this material go to waste? And that's when it hit me, Lindsay, You didn't cheat on me. You wrote my next special, so really, thank you for that." The room exploded. People weren't just laughing, they were losing control. The kind of deep, full-body laughter that only happens when you've witnessed something legendary. Some were screaming. A guy near the front had his head down on the table, pounding his fist against it like he couldn't breathe. And in that moment, I knew. I won. Linz wasn't sitting in some secret corner of the world giggling with Zach, thinking she got away with something. No, she was at home watching this. Watching me take her secret, her betrayal, and turn it into something she would never live down. I glanced at my phone, which had been vibrating non-stop in my pocket. I didn't need to check, I already knew. She was texting, calling, panicking. Zach was probably sitting next to her, sweating through his shirt, realizing his career had just flatlined in real time. I leaned on the mic stand, shook my head like I felt bad for them. All right, I'll stop. I don't want to be mean. I mean, what kind of person would humiliate someone they supposedly cared about in public, right? That would just be cruel. The room erupted again. Because that was it. That was the final nail in the coffin. I didn't need to spell it out for them. They got it. She was the one who humiliated me first. She was the one who treated me like a joke. All I did was return the favor. And that was the most brutal punchline of all. The set ended with a standing ovation. Not the polite kind, not the, "oh, that was funny, let's be nice" kind. This was real. People were on their feet, clapping, cheering, roaring, because they knew they had just witnessed something unforgettable. This wasn't just another comedy special. This was a moment in history. The live stream, it shattered records. My phone, blowing up with messages from agents, producers, networks. Everyone wanted a piece of what just happened. And me? I walked off that stage, took the deepest breath of my life, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I walked off that stage and into a different life. The air felt different, lighter, sharper, like I had finally stepped out of a fog I hadn't even realized I was in. My ears were still ringing from the roar of the crowd, from the way they had exploded at every punchline, every reveal, every moment that turned my personal disaster into comedic history. I had spent weeks, months, thinking about what I would do when I finally confronted Linz, thinking about the words I would say, the way I'd demand answers, the way I'd force her to look me in the eye and admit what she'd done. But none of that mattered anymore. Because I had already won. By the time I made it back to my dressing room, my phone was going insane. Calls, texts, voicemails, all from the same person, Linz. Over and over, her name lighting up my screen like a desperate SOS signal. I let it ring, let it vibrate against the counter as I poured myself a drink, sat down, and watched the notifications pile up. She was losing it, and I knew exactly why. I could picture her pacing back and forth, refreshing her feeds, watching her name trend for all the wrong reasons. She had spent so long crafting the image of the perfect wife, the supportive partner, the woman who stood beside her successful husband with a proud, loving smile. And now she was a meme, a joke, a punchline. I finally picked up on her third call, but I didn't say anything, just let the silence stretch out, let her sit in it. "Jimmy?" Her voice was shaky, breathless, like she had been crying or screaming. "What the F was that?" I swirled my drink in my glass, took a slow sip. "That," I said, my voice calm, steady, "that was me taking my life back." "You humiliated me," she spat, her words sharp with anger. "You made me look like some joke." I laughed. Actually, laughed. "Yeah, well," I said, leaning back in my chair, "you always did love a good punchline." She let out this strangled noise somewhere between a scoff and a sob. "Do you have any idea what you've done? My phone won't stop blowing up. I can't even open Instagram without seeing my name under some disgusting joke, Jimmy. You turned me into some villain." I let that hang for a moment, let the weight of it settle. Then I exhaled slowly and said, "I didn't turn you into anything, Linz. You did that yourself." Silence. For the first time, she had nothing to say. No excuses, no justifications, no clever little lies to twist the story in her favor. She had spent so much time playing the victim, so much time controlling the narrative, that she had no idea what to do when she was the one on the other end. "You didn't cheat privately," I continued, my voice still calm. "You didn't humiliate me privately. You didn't whisper about me in secret. You laughed. In bars, in public, with your little sidekick, like I was just some idiot who'd never figure it out. You made this public. I just finished the story for you." Another silence. But this one felt different. Heavier. I imagined her sitting there, phone pressed to her ear, lips parted like she wanted to say something, anything, but couldn't. Because there was nothing left to say. "Don't worry," I added, standing up, adjusting my jacket. "You won't have to see me again. The divorce papers are already on the way." And before she could say another word, I hung up. I stared at my phone for a moment, waiting, half expecting her to call back, to keep fighting, to try to flip this into something it wasn't. But she didn't. Instead, my screen lit up with a new text from an unknown number. "Man, can we talk?" "Zek." I laughed again, shaking my head. That was the best he could come up with, after everything, after standing in the shadows, waiting for his moment, after copying my work, my voice, my life. Now, when the entire internet was tearing him apart, now he wanted to talk? I didn't respond. There was nothing to talk about. His career was done before it even started. Not because people cared about what he did to me. Comedy isn't exactly a morality contest. But because no one was ever going to take him seriously again. Every time he stepped on stage, every single time, people would hear my words in the back of their heads. He wasn't a comedian anymore. He was a punchline. And Linz? She disappeared, deleted her Instagram within 24 hours, blocked comments on every platform she could. She went from posting daily influencer couple content to nothing, like she had been erased overnight. I didn't respond to any of it. Didn't post, didn't comment, didn't acknowledge it at all. I didn't have to. The work was already done. The fallout was bigger than even I had expected. My set was already being called one of the most iconic moments in modern stand-up history. Clips of it spread like wildfire. Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, everywhere. Every time someone searched my name, they found it. Every time someone searched hers, they found it. And me? I gotta work. Calls started coming in. Netflix, HBO, Amazon, producers, networks, everyone wanted a piece of what just happened. I had spent years grinding, hustling, waiting for my big break, and in one night, I had created it myself. But more than that, I felt something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hunger. Not for revenge, not for closure, just for the next step. The house felt too big, too full of memories I didn't want anymore. I put it up for sale the next week, found a new place in New York, closer to the scene, closer to the life I had before I let myself get too comfortable, before I let myself get soft. And one night, as I stood on a small stage in a tiny basement club, working out new material, watching a room full of strangers hang on my every word, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't heartbroken. I was free.